So ever since the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct wrapped up on YouTube or Twitch, wherever you decided to watch it, there's definitely been quite the snowball effect for Nintendo. Whether it's their fault or not, I'll leave for you to decide. But, things like leaving out the $80 price point of Mario Kart World is obviously something that they did on purpose for a reason. Now, they've kind of given some non-answers for it, but with yesterday's news about tariffs and now Nintendo delaying pre-orders in the United States until further notice for the Nintendo Switch 2, it's definitely been a lot of interesting optics for Nintendo. I do have some updates for you guys and some clarifications. The first portion of this video is going to be mostly the news side of things, and the second portion of the video is going to be a little bit more opinionated. Now, I am not a political expert. I am not an economic expert. I think I'm pretty good at business here. RGT is a very successful business, but this is just how I view things as far as the opinion side of things is concerned. But I want to talk about the actual news side of things, because obviously this whole situation yesterday with pre-orders being, I guess, indefinitely delayed as Nintendo looks at the marketplace and decides what to do, but the system is still coming out on June 5th, has definitely rattled quite a few people. And this, of course, is from the recent tariffs that have just been put into place. And because of this, Nintendo is now reassessing the marketplace. They actually moved from China to Vietnam for some of the production of the Nintendo Switch 2, because Vietnam was supposed to have lower tariffs than China, but then the current administration imposed some heavy tariffs on Vietnam. Now, I'm not going to sit here and go back and forth and talk about the importance of tariffs or why this is happening. You all can just talk about it in the comments, but let's be realistic. Most of us talking about this are not experts on the subject matter. But we do have an update since that situation has happened, because the current administration has indeed said that they are making great strides with Vietnam right now, and it seems like a resolution could happen sooner rather than later. Now, I don't pay attention to a lot of political things, but I have seen some of the stuff related to tariffs and the current administration and how things have been handled, and it does seem like this is more so a negotiation tactic than a completely hard stance. And most of the people that have been involved so far with countries like Mexico have indeed come to an agreement on the situation. So is this going to be sort of a long-standing thing? Nobody really knows the answer to that, I think. But this is something that is definitely a cause for concern. But I think it's interesting because this actually tells us something about the price of the Nintendo Switch 2 and the Nintendo Switch 2 games, is that, yes, this indeed was before the recent tariffs that were just put into place, meaning that the $80 game was a Nintendo decision. You can take that however you want, but people blaming the price of Mario Kart World on tariffs and things like that are grossly misinformed, because now they are readjusting things. Now they are recalculating things. The $80 Mario Kart World has always indeed been the plan for this situation. But I do think that, conflict resolution is something that's going to be very important involving this sort of thing, especially considering, you don't want to pay more for a system or games because of a tariff that, it has nothing to do with you as an individual. Now, there has been similar situations like this before in the past with increased tariff pricing when it involves the United States. Back in 2019, there was a situation with the United States and China, and basically Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo banded together to try and form an alliance to basically make themselves exempt from these increased tariff prices because of the video game industry and, them not being able to manufacture things in the States. And although that resolution ended up being an agreement between the United States and China, it is interesting to sort of think about that, because that is something that could also potentially be on the horizon, where the three companies once again band together and say, hey, we should be exempt from this sort of thing because, we're based in other countries. We don't have manufacturing plants there. There's not, enough resources to manufacture these things in the United States. So we do need an exemption. Now, it does seem like things might be a little bit different than they were then, than they are now, and stuff like that. Like I said, I'm not a super political guy. I'm just looking at historical things that have happened with this. So really, the big question is, what is the fallout from this going to be? How is this situation going to be resolved if it is resolved? And I do think that there are a bunch of different options and a bunch of different potential resolutions and outcomes with this situation. And some of them sound better than others. Like, we could go the kumbaya route and say, and this is kind of more so the opinion part of the video, but we could go the kumbaya route and assume that the political leaders will be able to work out these tariffs, and then in the end, it won't really be that big of a deal. When you look at other countries, when you look at countries like Australia, I believe they're paying like $700 for the Switch 2, or maybe it was like $750, and then when you factor in game prices, it's like $120, $130 based on their sort of tariffs, because every country kind of has their own, tariffs with this sort of thing. So if we can get out as far as, the $80 game, and you could choose whether to buy that or not, and the $450 system, I think that would be a positive resolution. Another potential outcome is that the Nintendo Switch 2, which analysts are saying isn't going to have a price increase now, could end up seeing a price increase. You have seen that happen with other manufacturers of consoles in select regions that have had tariff-related issues. So maybe they do the introductory price of $450 and $500, but then after 6 months or something like that, or maybe a calendar year, they raise the price of the system to $500 and $550 or something like that. I know that's something that people don't want to hear, but that is a possibility in this situation. A sort of introductory price for the people getting in on the ground floor, and then, it's kind of the reverse 3DS. The 3DS people paid more for the hardware and then got additional stuff when the price went down. This would be the complete inverse of that sort of thing. I think that's another potential possibility with this as well. And, it's going to make things difficult. It's going to make things difficult for Nintendo in terms of things like system sales and stuff like that. You've already delayed the pre-order, so now you're throwing in a monkey wrench to people who were anticipating this sort of thing, and you don't have a concrete date in mind. Now, there is one other train of thought, and this sounds like something that I would say, but I did not say this, okay? I did not say this. This actually came from She Says, Boundary Break. If you watch his videos on YouTube, he, breaks boundaries of stuff. I do think that this is worth mentioning because although it kind of, takes a shot at Nintendo, I'm not a Nintendo YouTuber, so I can talk about these sort of things. But Mr. Boundary Break, who has over 1 million subscribers, shout outs to you, man. I'll never hit 1 million. Making sure your greed arc is properly adjusted for tariff inflation is certainly one hell of a move. And then he shows the GameStop announcement that came out after I had made my video yesterday. I actually used a clip of this for the thumbnail of yesterday's second video. But, GameStop will continue to work closely with Nintendo and provide updates. The system is still coming out June 5th, but the potential impact of tariffs and ever evolving market conditions. And then he follows it up by saying, reminder to anyone apologizing for Nintendo in any way. In 2024 alone, Nintendo earned $4 billion in profit after all operating expenses. And then, of course, I came along. Why would you say something so controversial yet so brave? Because that is an interesting thing to think about. And I know the diehard Nintendo fanboys won't really want to hear that, but maybe you'll listen to it. Because really, hardware is not a thing you make a lot of money on. You make money on the software. So if you had to eat a little bit of the cost of your hardware, but then you're selling more software because more people have your system, and you're also selling that software at higher prices than you ever have before, in the long term, wouldn't that be more beneficial? Like, would you rather, you're not a company that's hurting for money. Sometimes you have to spend money to make money, and you have a bit of a war chest of money. So why not consider, you know, playing the role that you've played for a long time as being the cheaper alternative, the more, wallet friendly price point entry. And I'm not saying, I still think that $450 and $500 for the actual hardware that you're getting is still a great value, especially when you consider, it's way better than a Steam Deck, and it's about it's similar to like a ROG Ally X, at least in terms of the screen and what the screen can do. But of course, the ROG Ally X is an $800 product, and then you have to factor in it doesn't have the first party games. If you're selling a bunch of software, that's where you're going to make your money, not on hardware. So why even bring this up? Why even look at the tariffs and try to adjust things when you could eat a little bit of the cost in order to sell more software where you're making more money? Think of it like this. I'm just throwing out some random figures here. If you have to lose $30 on a system, $50, let's say $50 on a system, but you make $30 on each game sold, and you're selling so many games now that would counteract it. Like, yeah, your revenue might be a little bit shallower than you initially anticipated, but at least you're in the green with this. I'm throwing out possibilities. Me personally, I would rather sell two things at $10 than one thing at $15. And I think a lot of companies kind of are losing sight of things like that. Or this could just be the start of the video game crash in full force, and I was right the whole time, because the Switch 2, it's not going to sell as fast as the Switch 1. It's not going to do it. It's not going to do it. Look at what's happening with all these companies. RGT was right the whole time. The crazy man yelling about the video game crash foresaw this coming. I am your prophet. Listen to me. Anyways, guys, that's just my thoughts and opinions on a lot of this stuff. Obviously, I don't have all the answers. Nobody has all the answers. It's definitely a wait and see approach, but I thought this was an update worth sharing with the whole Vietnam situation. Be somewhat reasonable in the comments and respectable to people. Jesus Christ, I'm sure it's going to be an absolute shit show, but try to be at least a little bit of an adult. And give me your thoughts in the comments section down below. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I do want to thank you guys, because views have been insane. And they've been absolutely insane, like, the past couple of days. And, like, I am very, very grateful for your guys just watching my video, whether you agree with me or disagree with me. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.